Hello, so I'm Dr. Casper Adiman, and this is going to be a very fast and quite opinionated, but hopefully relatively useful guide to some things you can do to be more organised as a student. So how are we going to do that? Let's make a list. That's always a good approach. And the first thing, obviously, is what's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening. Um, you probably already realize how many emails you're getting, and that is the main way we will contact you. But it's important when you get that information to sort of make a note of it somewhere else. So actually sort of transfer any deadlines from an email into your own calendar, put your timetable onto your own calendar, and keep track of things like that. Hopefully you've all also downloaded the Goldsmiths Students app, which has a lot of information at your fingertips all in one place. And again, that's a very useful way of knowing, if you don't know something immediately, you know where to find the information. The third good way of knowing what's going on is to ask each other. And in this day and age, that I think means having WhatsApp groups. So hopefully you've got one for your tutorial group. I'd recommend, if you have any other sort of small study groups, starting those as well. Because if you don't know the answer, maybe somebody else does. And that's really important. Missing deadlines, you don't get any second chances if you miss deadlines. Unless there's a very good reason, you will fail, and you'll get just a capped mark of 40% for that piece of work, however good it was. So you don't ever want to miss a deadline, and that means knowing when they're coming up and planning things in advance. You might want, therefore, to keep a notebook of some kind, keeping track of things. I actually, these days, this was my notebook, but these days I use this electronic notebook system called Notion. And there's various systems like that you could have a look at. Let's just have a quick look at mine. So that is over here. It's an app that lets you keep a to-do list, which is very important. And mine, as you can see, I can arrange it by the week. So here are all the things I've got to do this week, and it lets me arrange them into, this one's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday. And in fact, I've written the slides for that, so let's say that that's already been done. And it also then lets me keep notes on top of those, each of those files. So I could, if I have got an essay deadline that goes on my to-do list, I can put the title and other links to like URLs in here. It's all electronic, and that sort of quickly links you to what you need to know. So I would recommend looking at something like that and seeing if it's going to work for you. Right, what next? Well, a lot of what we're going to tell you comes in the form of lectures, less so face-to-face these days, and more recorded on Moodle, like this one. It's important when you're watching those that you are taking notes as you go along. Just watching something passively does not get it into your brain very effectively. So I would always recommend that you watch it in the panopto viewer rather than just as a straight video. Then you can stop and start it more easily. You can jump around from slide to slide, and Proctor lets you put notes on top of the individual slides that you're interested in, so that they're relevant when you come back to look at it later. But again, if you're making notes, you could do those in a notebook or on an electronic notebook. And you'll see sort of back here in my mission control that I have, as well as my to-do list, I have little links to notes from lectures and things that I might have attended. So those can follow this quite nice format called the Cornell note style, where you, for each slide or each section, you might have keywords and notes relevant to that. And actively creating notes like that helps you learn better. I also have notes for other things that I've been working on. So over here I might have, let's open this one, notes for lots of different projects. And because they're all in one place, I always know where to find them. And that is a very handy thing if you're trying to be organized. Don't take my word for it. This incredibly, terrifyingly organized guy, Ali Abdaal, recommends this same system. And this video here explains how he came top of his year in medical school at Cambridge by taking very careful notes in all of his lectures. He's also got terrifyingly organized in every other aspect of his life. So have a look at that. Right, what's next? Reading. So as well as listening to us talk, you're going to be doing an awful lot of reading of your own to support every lecture. The further you go along in your course, the more of that is going to be of actual scientific research papers. So your starting point for a lot of reading will be Google Scholar. When you get onto the extended essay later this term, you're going to be doing your own research and reading individual papers. So knowing how to use Google Scholar, knowing how to use something called Scihub to find papers is also important. And then I recommend that you start to use right now a reference management software. So I use something called Zotero. There's a couple of other possibilities that exist. There's something called Papers, which I think is only on Macintosh. And then another app called Mendeley. And those work really well as a way to organize all the papers that you're going to read and want to keep track of. So let's go into a little bit more detail about reading. It's really key to what you're doing. So let's just see that process. That if I start in, where did we go? In Google Scholar, and I am currently doing a project about baby sleep. And if I'm searching for things, the first step clue is don't just search for baby sleep. Try and give us a very specific search term to get things which are very directly relevant to what you're looking at. So baby sleep is on its own wouldn't be much use, but if I add the term parental coping, that gives me papers that are particularly relevant. And these first two here do look like things that I would need to know about. So where will baby sleep? Attitude of new parents, baby sleep problems, mother's coping experience. So because I'm using Zotero, it adds a little plugin to my browser, and then I can now choose both of those first two papers, and it then will add those to my library. If I go over to that app, wherever it is here, so they see they've just appeared at the top. Both of those are now sort of in this library of all the papers that I've ever read or that I am keeping track of. And at the moment, you won't have very many, but over time, you'll be surprised how quickly that adds up. What's good about that is that in some cases, it downloads you the PDF. Hasn't done that here, so maybe I'll have to download the PDF myself. I can then add it in into that library, and I can then read it on my computer. So Zotero isn't the best for that. If you use something like Papers or Mendeley, you actually have the PDF reader inside your reference management software, so you can read the papers there, and it will actually keep track of any highlights you make right on that single version of the paper, which is then synchronized across your iPad and your computer. You can access it online if you're on a college computer. So it keeps your own versions of your notes sort of synchronized wherever you need them. If you haven't heard of Scihub, this is a site that lets you get access to things where Goldsmiths doesn't have access. So it sort of breaks what's called the paywall on things. Technically, it's illegal, but until there's a better system, we might have to sometimes break the law. And then you've got your papers. What happens next? Well, please don't print them out. It's you might lose the copies. It's not good for the environment. Your notes will only appear on that copy. You might not have it with you when you want to do something in college. So keep everything electronic and don't get too overwhelmed at first. Don't try and read everything that's relevant. Pick out things where the title appeals to you. Start from things where, right, I understand this, and then your knowledge will build up. Yeah, don't print things out and be critical. Everything you're reading, the authors strongly believes in their own point of view. There are alternatives, and so we always have to try and say, are we being told a very polished version of this version, this study? The other thing, please keep things digital, and whenever you go to a new topic, a best place to start is with a review paper which covers the whole topic area. That will point you the way to other important papers. Then judge things by the number of citations that they have. So highly cited papers means that other people have used that work, and that's a clue that it was important in that topic. And gradually work your way down to other papers, and be completely fine to not read things. It's okay to not cover absolutely everything. In fact, it's impossible to cover everything. Within a paper, you should also be reading in this hierarchical way. So read the title first and the abstract. If by the time you read the abstract you don't understand it or it doesn't seem that relevant, just stop, leave it alone. Same from there, you just jump straight to the results. Look at the graphs of the results. Do they make sense? Do you understand what's going on? If not, right, maybe we have to now start looking at the methods to understand what questionnaires was being used, what was going on. Later on, you'll be care about the references and other papers in literature. That's more of a master's level thing. For undergraduate, you're sort of still wanting to find out what's going on in these papers. So maybe leap into the introduction, and the first and the final paragraph of the introduction are the most important, and same for the discussion. The first and the final paragraph are where you'd start. So you can break these things down and it doesn't become quite as overwhelming as this very densely typed single page. Use your highlighter, electronic highlighter, so that you can go back to the important things later on when you find them, because it's often buried in amongst other information. If you're going to use a paper for your own experiment, then you do have to read the method very carefully in that paper, and that will certainly be something you encounter next year when you're doing your own research project. Okay, so we've done the reading. Now it's time to do the writing. For this, I would recommend Word, because it's compatible with so many other things. We got a free license in the department, and it's electronic, so it's always keeping backups of your work so that you don't lose them. Very important factor. Certainly in the past, I've lost work just because one computer dies at the wrong time. With modern versions of Word, that should not be a problem. If you've got a reference manager piece of software, this fits in with your writing, and I'll just show you that in a second. And highlighting is important again in writing. So let's just have a look at that. Here were these papers that I was working on. This Sci one was important. I didn't find where did I find the paper version of that? Right, have we got the PDF? I thought I downloaded it earlier. No, let's try and do this. Here we are, yeah. So here is, that's actually the other paper. This is Ball, Hooker and Kelly, Where Will Baby Sleep? right, that's very interesting for my research, and we won't try and read it right now, but let's just say this little section here was quite important, and I want to mention that in my paper. So let's copy that text and just put it into the framework of a document. So if I'm starting to build a document, I like starting to put notes straight into there. But as soon as I've copied and pasted anything from anywhere else, the first thing I do is highlight it in yellow to say that those are not my own words. I didn't write that. Somebody else wrote that. I can't use that without either making a quotation or rephrasing it and relevant to my thing. But that's an important point I want to include in my essay, so I'm putting it in the sort of plan of my essay that I'm building up. Now, because I've got that paper inside my reference software, this software links to Word, and once you've installed it, it installs this little button here called Zotero. And I want to add the citation, so that was ball and sleep, wasn't it? So I type that in there into the search. Yes, this is the paper. So it will add that as a citation for me in the correct format. And if we scroll down to the end of my paper, it just adds that to my references automatically as well in the APA format. So I'm building up my paper, building up the relevant information, and I'm saving a lot of time on having the references that I need in the right place. So I recommend learning how to do that. Right, what's next? So use the highlighter for things that you're copying into your notes. I'm not going to go too much else into writing except to say go back to basics, build things up step by step, make a plan for the whole essay, break it down paragraph by paragraph, even within a paragraph, break it down into what do I want to say at the beginning, what's the evidence, what's the sort of take-home message, and it makes writing a lot less overwhelming if you do take it step by step. Right, so we're quite organised, we're doing okay. It's worth also in this process, looking after ourselves. So, that's not supposed to happen. So there's a very last section. Let's just think about important, more broader issues that are important to organising ourselves. So what you can do for your brain, that your friends and your social support network is also important. And then just a few tips on sort of being generally organised. So it's worth remembering that things like caffeine only help up to a point. A little bit of caffeine is good for you. Too much makes you overstressed and your performance suffers. This is called an inverted U-shaped curve. The same is true of any type of stress. So a little bit of stress makes you motivated. Too much stress is going to impair your performance. So over-caffeinating yourself is bad. Overstressing yourself is bad. And things like deadline, leaving things to the last minute, it increases your motivation, but it's going to make you perform worse. So keep that in mind at all times. And sort of perhaps related, that do get enough sleep. Sleep is wonderful from many purposes. It certainly, if you haven't slept well, you won't be very good at taking notes or writing. But sleep is very important for in consolidating our learning. So making sure that there's enough balance in your life to get proper sleep. even naps. I know a professor in France who has an afternoon nap at 2:30 every afternoon, and he swears by it. Other things you can do to keep your brain healthy, doing exercise, going out for a run seems to be better for your sort of improving your cognition and your creativity than any of those brain training games that you get on phones and iPads. And it's good for your physical health as well. And the other one, very well supported by psychological evidence, is to try meditation, which helps with ability to concentrate and to hold your attention. Also helps you sort of deal with stress that you might encounter, and gives you a broader perspective on life. Sitting silently for 10 minutes every day, just trying to concentrate, to think, takes you just like a moment's breath, and it's very important to sort of not be so wrapped up in your own problems. And if you can do that every day of your life, you will quickly start to notice a difference. So put that into your daily routine. Having a routine during the week is really useful. Try and eat breakfast. Research says that that's good for your brain and for your ability to concentrate. Try and have a clear plan of what you're doing each day, and stick to it. So if you've got things which are tricky, it's tempting to procrastinate those. But it's much more rewarding if you can do the difficult things first, and then you're on a downhill slope, and other easier things are easier to do. So you need to plan your time a little bit. You want to do things in chunks. It's really difficult for your brain if you switch from one thing to another. So yeah, do keep that diary and plan out when you're doing what. And perhaps you're already at home, but do stop working as well. It's important to be able to take breaks. And if you're doing a little bit every day, you get time to do that. If you're leaving things to the day before your deadlines, it's harder to separate out work and life, and the stress of what you're doing sort of will overflow into the rest of your life. When you're setting yourself sort of these targets, a useful acronym is SMART, nowadays sometimes called SMARTER. So any goal that you're doing should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. When you've done it, you should evaluate it, and then you should keep evaluating that these are the right goals to have set. This is something that's really been used a lot in business schools, and it's been around for many decades, but it is very effective. I won't go into the details now, but this can be applied to a whole project, like an extended essay, or to just an individual things that you have to do in a day. The other important thing to sort of coping with all of this is that you're all in the same boat, and you should have a support network where you can share your problems and sort of share your solutions to them. It's a tricky time at best, and if we're all isolated in our homes a lot more now, it's something that can get overlooked, but it's really, really important. So do find ways to stay in touch with each other. That is almost everything. The other thing is to take proper breaks. So take periods of time where you are completely away from your work, and actual sort of long weekends or periods of time over the holidays where can be tempting to say I'm going to do work every day, but it's actually more valuable to you if you can say, right, for this whole week, I'm actually not going to be doing research. And that's pretty much everything, except to say, even when we are all incredibly organized and make superb plans for everything, things will go wrong. The best laid plans of mice and men often ganaglay. So be prepared for surprises. We've all had, quite a bit of experience of that in the past year. There always will be more things that can go wrong. This is where your support network and reaching out to your tutors is important, and to realize that this is just the way life works. Things will always go wrong, however well we plan to be organized. And that is everything. Thank you.